As 2021 comes to an end, mental health is more important than it's ever been before. Due to many changes in the last few years, it has impacted many people's mental well-being. It is important that we are all knowledgeable about what mental health and disorders are, who it affects, and how we can overcome mental illnesses. Let's first start off with what mental health is. Mental health can be defined as a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. There are numerous types of mental disorders. Most commonly diagnosed is anxiety and depression, as 4 in 10 adults in the US suffer from this disorder. Other disorders, such as bipolar disorder, can cause unusual shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, concentration, and the ability to carry out day-to-day tasks. Increasingly, schizophrenia, an even more serious disorder, can alter your perception of reality. How to know if you are suffering from a mental disorder. Figuring out your symptoms and what's truly going on in your head is essential to helping you move in the right direction. Some of the most common signs and symptoms of mental illness are feeling down for a while, extreme mood swings, low energy, and problems sleeping. However, mental illnesses can also transpire into affecting our mental state, such as stomach aches, back pain, and insomnia. Those who have personally identified these issues in themselves should seek help by speaking to a therapist and may even follow a treatment plan. Speaking to a therapist or a person who can help you is a giant leap forward. It may be hard to gather the courage to speak your true emotions. This should not be taken lightly. You should be extremely proud of yourself for being brave enough to share your emotional complications. Due to COVID-19, it has affected many teenagers who have been forced to isolate themselves from their closest friends. It has also put a lot of social gatherings on halt. As we now enter the phase of returning back to school, we are still left with a lot of uncertainties. We as students need to be prepared for daily disruptions and changes of the schedule due to COVID. Many teens will struggle from a mental disorder in some shape or form. At least 13% of people between the ages of 10 and 19 have a diagnosed mental health disorder. Sadly, mental illnesses seem to be rising more each year. A study showed that teenagers in the US are 5% more likely to have a mental illness than teens were in 2005. Although most mental health disorders arise during adolescence, UNICEF says that only 1/3 of investments in mental health research is targeted towards young people. The COVID-19 pandemic had a huge global effect on the economy. People were losing jobs or put in situations where they didn't have the ability to work. Due to this, the working class and young adults were gravely affected by this change. 4 in 10 adults had reported to have anxiety or depressive disorder. Over July 2020, 36% of adults were reported to have trouble sleeping and 32% had trouble eating. Alcoholic consumption also went up by 12% to cope with all the worry and stress. During the pandemic, 56% of young adults between ages 18 to 14 reported symptoms of anxiety and/or depressive disorder. Compared to all adults, young adults are more likely to report substance abuse, which is 25% compared to 13. 25% of young adults were also reported to have suicidal thoughts. Research has shown that the benefit of exercise can boost moods and improve overall mental health. By moving our bodies, we can increase our endorphins, one of the body's naturally producing hormones that makes us feel better. It also allows us to concentrate on ourselves instead of our busy lives, a much needed break for many of us. However, playing sports does not make athletes immune to mental health challenges. Athletes carry a lot of pressure on their shoulders to consistently perform at the highest level on top of day-to-day pressures. Being a top athlete can be extremely challenging for a person's mental health, student athletes have an additional pressure. They must balance classwork and grades with practices and events. Among professional athletes, data has shown that up to 35% of elite athletes suffer from a mental health crisis, which may manifest as stress, eating disorders, being burnt out, and, of course, anxiety and depression. They seem to go hand in hand with just about every case. On the other hand, many athletes put their bodies at risk every time they go out and perform. Many athletes get injured. Some will have longer recovery times than others. Being out of your sport can be very mentally challenging. You have a desire to get back in there and play, but are forced to sit on the sideline and wait to get better. Genesis 1:27 states, "All human beings, regardless of what ailment they suffer, are made in the image and likeness of God." Same Pope John Paul II later reaffirms this statement by saying, "Whoever suffers mental illness always bears God's image and likeness, and has an inalienable right to be considered a person and treated as much." As members of a Catholic community, we have the responsibility to take care of one another. We were made in God's image. One of the most important Catholic social justices is care for God's creation. As part of God's creation, we must help one another in show of respect for God. What is your personal opinion on mental health? I think that mental health is very important. I'm glad to see that mental health is becoming more of a familiar subject for people to talk about. I've dealt with my fair share of mental health. I unfortunately injured my leg and had to have surgery. The hardest part is having to sit out from your sport and watch others play, while you're stuck doing physio twice a week. I try to take it every day at a time and accept the new circumstances I'm in. I've grown to accept it and other unfortunate events in life, as we don't have much control over certain things. We just have to learn to live with it. Ways of coping with mental illnesses. You should try to talk about your feelings with people that you trust or people that can help you. Try to stay active, as it will boost your self-esteem and help you concentrate on what's important to you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. None of us are superhumans. We all get tired and overwhelmed eventually. You should also be aware when to take a break so you don't burn out. And at the end of the day, you have to accept your circumstances and accept who you are, or else you'll never be able to move forward. Overall, mental illness is something that should be taken seriously and should be a more talked about subject. I hope you enjoyed listening.